My stepmother never let up with her false accusations and rants. I eventually got my petty revenge. I could easbe the A. This happened a long time ago, before the internet was so dang popular. I'm 43F now, but was 18 when this story began. My dad has not always been lucky in love. He raised my brother and I from my age of 6 years old. Our first stepmother was and still is our MOM, a title that is earned. He married our second stepmom in our early teens, but they split a few years later. Just after I graduated high school, he met STM3. I had a part-time job and was attending college classes at the age of 18. I paid rent and helped keep the house and our pets taken care of. Even before moving in our house, STM3 was constantly there. Whether or not my dad was, my best friends happened to be males. I worked with several others at a golf course. I did have a couple female friends, but they lived an hour away. My dad understood that my brother and I still had a good relationship with our mom and was supportive regardless of blood. STM3 would often corner me between classes and work shifts while my dad was at work. They hadn't yet married, yet she would try to lecture me on my behavior. She accused me of being lazy and ungrateful. She often tried to make me feel slutty for being friends with and hanging out with guys. The funny bit here was that at 18, I had never gone on a date or had sex. I paid $250 a month for rent, which I know isn't much, but I also kept the house clean and did everybody's laundry. I had 5 college classes that I paid for and worked 30 hours a week. I very rarely went out socially. When she began to accuse me of helping my dad to hide other dating habits or girlfriends, I knew beyond doubt this chick was nuts. STM3 claimed that of course I knew about his relationships and calls to other women. After all, being his daughter and living under the same roof, how could I not know? I tried to explain how bonkers that was, but she kept on. I warned my dad, but his rose-colored glasses prevented him from seeing the truth. After dating a few months, they got married. Her son, my brother, and I all got along really well. Her son eventually even moved in with my male bestie. I was trying to save money, which is why I remained in their house. Eventually, my car died, forcing me to quit school. Until I got another car, my bestie or his dad would get me to work, and a coworker brought me home. At that point, I worked 40 hours a week, still maintained the house, did laundry, even STM3, and looked after all the animals. She had brought her dog and expected me to take care of her too. Our little conversations became part of my daily routine. I pretty much tuned her out most of the time. After all, my dad seemed happy. After 2 miserable years, I moved out. One evening, I overheard my stepbrother on the phone with his girlfriend. Recently had moved back in. He had mentioned that my bestie had called the house looking for him, but wasn't sure how bestie knew where he was. I calmly mentioned that I had told him the last time we spoke. Apparently, they had a falling out, but neither wanted to worry me, so they didn't mention it. Well, STM3 heard that and completely flew off the handle at me. At this point, I had 1 full-time day job, 1 part-time night job, and 1 family that I babysat for once a week. I was never really around beyond cleaning and sleeping. STM3 began yet again on my laziness and how I wasn't grateful for being able to live there. I was always out with guys and obviously allowing things to happen. Mind you, I was still a virgin. My late nights made them look bad. I needed to mind my own business and stop putting my nose where it doesn't belong. My stepbrother tried to tell her that I had no idea that he and my bestie had a falling out. He tried to explain that they had agreed not to involve me, so I had no idea that he didn't want my bestie to know he was there. STM3 refused to hear it. Usually, her rants took place when nobody was around. I hadn't been home a lot and avoided her whenever possible, so this was the first time my dad and stepbrother witnessed anything. I am generally easygoing and patient, but that night was my last. As I stood up glaring at her, waiting for a moment to speak, I felt hands hold my shoulders and slowly go to the fists I didn't realize were clenched. My stepbrother placed himself between us, faced me, and told me to breathe. At that moment, I looked at my dad and told him I loved him before apologizing. Then, holding my stepbrother's hand for support, I told her plainly that I would be moving out that night. I moved in with my bestie, with my stepbrother helping to explain why. A few months later, their marriage began to fall apart. She accused my dad of abuse, which her own son denied in court. She accused him of stealing her money, which the bank proved untrue. She accused him of having affairs, which was easily shown to be a lie. His work schedule and his time home, proven by cameras from nearby businesses, showed he was always at one or the other. Here's where my petty comes to play. Perhaps I am an asterisk, but I simply don't care. I maintained a friendship with my stepbrother, former stepbrother, for a long time before losing touch. One day while holiday shopping, I found something that immediately made me think of STM3. She loved ornaments and Disney. Now, I told my stepbrother what the item was and gave him the choice of whether she received it or not before handing it over. A few days later, STM3 called to thank me for her gift. She was absolutely gushing over the ornament and how it meant so much to her that I thought of her. I had the phone on speaker because my bestie and his parents were with me and aware of my gift. I could hear my stepbrother start laughing just as we all did. Then, the dingbat realized exactly why the gift of a Pinocchio Christmas ornament made me think of her. A little too late, she backpedaled, saying she knew exactly what the joke was and how cruel it was. I know that was a long read, and apologize for that. The details did kind of matter though. My bestie and I still laugh about that ornament. It has become a favorite story to tell 22 years later. Android tablets with dead batteries. A few years ago, we purchased very basic Android tablets from Amazon for our preteen boys. These were not name brand devices and were being turned over to two active young guys. We figured damage was very likely and purchased the Amazon protection plan for about $20 a device. These tablets were only about $95 each. According to Amazon and the underwriter, the policies covered everything except loss, drops, water damage, broken screens, whatever. Anyway, the boys had the devices for about 6 months when both of their batteries started to fail. We would charge them up, but it was clear they weren't holding a charge and were becoming unusable. We reached out to the phone number from Amazon and reported the devices weren't working. They did some over-the-phone troubleshooting as we explained the battery issue. They then told us that it was still under factory warranty and we needed to communicate with the manufacturer for repair. As I mentioned, these were basically pieces of crap from a no-name company. We reached out to them and they wanted us to pay for shipping and a $49.95 diagnostic fee per device. This caused me to read the policy more carefully and understand exactly what was covered. At that point, I came up with a plan. The family was heading out for dinner and I loaded the devices into a backpack. Then, I accidentally placed the bag directly behind my wife's rear tire and she mistakenly backed over it as we were pulling out. I got out of the car to see what the crunching sound was and suggested she pull forward again so I could check. At that point, the tablets were essentially shards of glass and broken plastic. I resubmitted the claim and poured the various remnants of the devices into a box. A few weeks later, we had Amazon credit for 2 new tablets. Our boys still laugh hysterically over this, and my wife is still a little mortified that I would do it. Foot filing lady at the pool. There's a list of rules for hygienic purposes of do's and don'ts at the public pool, change room/sauna areas. It's well kept, which is why I enjoy going there. Anyway, there was this woman filing her feet next to me in the shower area. I politely let her know about the rule, thinking she missed it on the wall. She arrogantly smiled, said, "Okay," and continued filing her feet. I didn't say anything more and there was no staff around, so I let it go. Fast forward a few weeks later. I see her again taking a shower. I know from previously, she goes to have a sauna after and likes to lay down up high and take up most of the space. So, I go into the sauna and sit in the middle on the top bench, leaving no room to lie down on either side. She comes in shortly after and tries to lie down on the middle bench, but my feet are on the middle of that bench too. She's lying awkwardly and decides to move to the top bench with her back against the wall and legs stretched out. Since I placed myself in the middle, it would be difficult to even stretch your legs out fully without touching me or my towel. I look down and her feet are on the edge of my towel, and being petty, I let her know. She apologizes and then asks me if I would want to move down a bit, and I say, "No, I like where I'm sitting," then closed my eyes and meditated. Fast forward a week later, and I see her and her foot filers sitting in the open cubby area. She's still swimming, and I'm back in the change room where I see a regular who happens to be named Karen. We catch up and I point to the foot filers in the cubby area and tell her about her. Karen knows of the lady and, disgusted by her behavior, impulsively decides to take matters into her own hands. She grabs the foot filers, walks over to the trash bin and tosses them out. Haven't seen her since, and she made no scene over her missing foot filers. Got someone fired. I was walking with my son towards our car when a white van, those Sprinter work vans, drove past us and angles his car to back into the spot we were about to walk by. I assumed he saw us. How could he miss us? We were literally in front of him a second ago. He began backing up, and I had to yank my son back by his shirt collar to stop him from getting hit. In frustration, I said, "Hey, you almost hit us." If he had apologized, we would have just moved on. People make mistakes. An acknowledgement and apology is all someone can expect. But no, he had to start using expletives and blaming me, the pedestrian in a parking lot. A couple of quips and angry exchanges as I walk away, and he leaves his van and heads to his destination. Petty revenge time. Took pictures of license plate and some of the commercial identification numbers. Went home, some quick Google later, and I've sent an email to the company that owns the van. Later get an email from someone in charge of production of a movie or TV show asking me to call. I make that call, and this guy is very perturbed of the situation and has kids himself. He tells me this will be dealt with severity. TLDR driver of production crew, Vin almost hit me and my kid. Yelled at me when he was in the wrong. I called his boss and got him fired. P.S. I don't know if he actually got fired, but in my headcanon he did. Boss won't let me park on public space. Neither can you. This happened many years ago. I'm an IT contractor living in England. I got a job working next to the Welsh Assembly in Wales, shockingly. Typically I'd travel on bicycle/train, since there wasn't really a need for a car in Cardiff. One week I needed my car there for something, so I arrive early Monday morning. Between the Welsh Assembly and our building was a triangle of land that belonged to the WA, but they'd not included it inside their wall. So it was just this triangle of unmaintained mud/grass. Big enough for one car parallel to the wall, or two cars perpendicular. I arrived, parked with enough space for another car. There was usually one parked there. Midway through the day I get called over by my boss, who asks if I've parked there. He says that his boss is pissed because I'm parked there. I argue over it being public land, etc. I'm told that this boss gets the say on my contract and doesn't need a reason to end my contract. Fine, I'll move my car. Within 30 minutes of moving my car, boss's boss has turned his around so nobody else can park there. This annoys me. The following Sunday, I visit the local car hire company and find out that because of the miracle of the British train network, it costs me about an extra £20 to hire a car for the week. Off to Cardiff I go. Car gets parked there from 6 a.m. Monday all the way through to 6 p.m. Friday. Boss asks if it's mine. Of course not. You've seen what I drive. I don't know nothing. This goes on for the next 4 months of my contract. I'm going to make it harder to hide your infidelity. Years ago, I was dating this guy for about a year. I was young, dumb, and he kept saying he wasn't ready for a relationship but wanted me to himself, face with rolling eyes. Near the end, when I was finally coming to my senses, I found out he had gotten a girlfriend sometime during that year. My source also provided that she was rightfully suspicious of him seeing someone else. We had a date planned, and I decided not to say anything just yet. His new girlfriend had short blonde hair. I had long dark red hair. I strategically ran my fingers through my hair and held onto any loose strands. Luckily, it was night and easy to not be super obvious, and when he was in the store, I placed the strands throughout his car. I stopped seeing him and blocked him after that, and unfortunately never actually heard if she found the hair, but I like to think it blew up in his face. Block the road? How about find your key? I was driving though my neighborhood. It was developed in the 1940s and has narrow streets and a lot of on-street parking, and I encounter a delivery truck, with its lift gate extended, parked crooked across the road, blocking the flow of traffic. The way the truck was positioned, if the driver had pulled forward another 3 feet, they could have allowed for the passage of traffic. As I pull up, I see the 2 delivery men using a dolly to move a refrigerator into the house. I signal to them and ask if they can pull forward a couple feet to allow me, and others, to pass. The driver signals back to me with the 1-finger salute and continues to move the fridge into the house. I wait until they're inside and the storm door closes. I jump into the cab. The truck had been left running, and pull the truck forward the few feet necessary. As I exit, I turn the truck off, remove the key, single key, tiny paper fob, and throw the key into the across-the-street neighbor's lot. a few houses down with a terribly unkept yard. As I'm pulling away, the delivery guys come back out of the house. I give them my best Princess D wave, followed by my own one-finger salute, and kept on driving. Edit. Punctuation. Okay, then block my driveway. I live next to a school, and I've had parents back up into my driveway to wait for their children. If I'm not going anywhere, I don't mind, no harm, no foul. One day, I came home to find a woman in my driveway. I got out of my car and asked her to please pull out for a second so I could pull in, and then you can back up where you were. She said I will only be a few minutes. I said, Ma'am, I live here, and I'd like to get into my garage. Because it's a narrow street and parents are now parked on both sides, the street access is now narrow and only one car can get by at a time. I told her that I cannot wait here a few minutes because I'm blocking traffic. Well, I'll be moving in a bit. I said, okay. No, you won't be. I then parked perpendicular to her vehicle, blocking my own driveway and her vehicle. As I walked by, I told her I really have to use the bathroom and have stomach cramps. You are welcome to call the police if you like. I'll be out in a bit. The look on her face after she realized what was happening was priceless. A few minutes later, I could hear honking. A few more minutes later, I hear honking and my doorbell ringing. Only because I saw it was a child ringing on my Ring doorbell, I answered, I'll be out in a minute, I'm washing my hands. I could hear the little boy screaming to his mother, I assume. He says he's washing his hands. By the time I came out a few more minutes later, all the vehicles and students were gone. I very slowly walked past her car, avoiding eye contact, and got into my car. I adjusted the mirror, moved the car seat forward, then back slowly, started the car, and moved my car forward slowly. All I heard was the tires screeching and the car horn honking as she left. Her windows were rolled up, so I can only assume the little boy got an earful of nice words as she was leaving. My neighbors were wondering what was going on with all the honking. When I explained, they said, oh yeah, that's what we kind of figured. Damage my fence, will you? Not my story, but a neighbor's. We lived in a cul-de-sac with a 90-degree bend 1/3 of the way in. At that point were the gates to a primary school with their grounds on the opposite side of the road to all the houses. I learned to leave for work before 8 o'clock and not try to return home at end of school between 14:45 and 15:30. It was always a mess, barely room for 2 cars to pass, even if none were parked on the pavement or not. His particular problem was a garden fence that ran along his side boundary adjacent to a 3-foot path. The last post was at the point where path went from along his property to in front of it. Over a year, parents reversed into this post, mounting the pavement to do so, and with enough speed to break or dislodge the 100mm post. He was pissed as it was costing him to replace the post and fence, whilst the guilty parents just laughed. During the summer break, he replaced the post with an iron beam and painted it brown. First driver to reverse into it did a good job on their car and knocked on his door demanding compensation, as did the next few. He just laughed, pointed out they were breaking the law by mounting the pavement and 4-inch curb at speed before shutting the door on them.